Welcome to this explainer. Over the next 10 minutes or so, we're going to completely unpack James Herriot's classic story, A Triumph of Surgery. But listen, we aren't just going to sit here and summarize the plot. Instead, we're going to break it down into a highly structured, strategic guide that's literally designed to help you master the narrative and secure those top marks on your exams. Whether you're trying to figure out the deeper character motivations, untangle the story's irony, or just figure out exactly what those examiners are actually looking for, you are absolutely in the right place. So grab your notes, get comfortable, and let's get started. Okay, let's dive right into our roadmap for today. We'll start with the initial medical crisis, look at the vet's intervention, trace the flow of recovery, unpack the core irony of the whole thing, and then finally master those exam questions. Section 1, the bloated sausage crisis. So, our inciting incident centers around this small, incredibly pampered dog named Tricki. Now, Tricki isn't suffering from some natural, unavoidable illness. His health has been completely compromised by a diet of little extras. We're talking malt, cod liver oil, Horlicks, and, of course, cream cakes and chocolates. It's a textbook case of killing with kindness, and this brilliantly illustrates the central conflict of the entire narrative. On one side, we have his owner, Mrs. Pumphrey. The text explicitly calls her foolishly indulgent. Her affection for Tricki is huge, but it's totally misplaced. She thinks she's treating malnutrition, but she is actually causing a massive health crisis. On the flip side, we have the narrator, Mr. Herriot. He embodies pure pragmatism. He is tactful and exercises strict professional discipline. So right from the jump, you need to understand, this isn't just a story about a sick dog. It's a major thematic clash between uncontrolled emotion and disciplined common sense. Now, if you really want to score well on your essays, you've absolutely got to use the story's precise vocabulary. Take the word roomy, for example. It means a watery discharge from the eyes. In the text, Tricki isn't just feeling a bit under the weather. He's explicitly described as a bloated sausage with bloodshot and roomy eyes. When you're writing your answers, whatever you do, don't just say the dog looked sick. Examiners are actively hunting for these specific value points. Dropping a word like roomy instantly signals to whoever is grading your paper that you fully understand the severe physical toll of Mrs. Pumphrey's overindulgence. Along those same lines, we have the word listless, which means lacking energy or enthusiasm. This word perfectly captures Tricki's critical before state. Mrs. Pumphrey genuinely thought he was suffering from malnutrition simply because he was so listless. Again, a huge trap for students is writing that Tricki was just fat or lazy. Please don't do that. Instead, use the exam-oriented keyword listless. It shows you grasp the exact critical nature of his pre-treatment lethargy. Moving on to Section 2, the tactful vet intervention. As you might guess, things go from bad to worse pretty quickly. Tricki starts suffering from bouts of vomiting, and he's even refusing his absolute favorite dishes. It's at this point Mr. Herriot decides it's time to take a really firm line. Before taking the dog away, he issues this stark, totally professional ultimatum to Mrs. Pumphrey. Harden your heart. Basically, he demands she keep Tricki on a strictly regulated diet. But despite all her hand-wringing and her dramatic claims that it's all just very difficult, she utterly fails to actually implement the regime. Her complete inability to discipline herself, and by extension her dog, is what ultimately forces Herriot to physically remove Tricki from that toxic home environment. What happens next is honestly one of the most absurd and hilarious scenes in the whole text. As Herriot is taking Tricki to the clinic for observation, the entire household staff is just roused into this total frenzy. Maids are literally rushing in and out of the house to pack Tricki's quote-unquote essentials. And what are those? We are talking about day beds, night beds, cushions, breakfast bowls, lunch bowls, and supper bowls. It's this hilariously chaotic visual that just perfectly highlights the absolute ridiculousness of Mrs. Pumphrey's wealth and her extreme indulgence. All right, Section 3, the flow of recovery. Now, what's really interesting here is tracing the exact chronological progression of Tricki's cure once he gets to the veterinary clinic, or the surgery, as they say in British English. If you look closely at the treatment timeline, you'll notice a glaring omission. What's missing? Medicine. There is absolutely zero medical intervention here. For the first 2 days, Tricki is put on a strict water-only fast. That's it. By day 3, he finally starts showing a little spark of life, casually licking inside the other dog's bowls. And then, over the course of just 1 fortnight, 2 weeks, he transitions entirely back to peak physical fitness. And he does it purely through natural exercise and having to actually compete for his food. Which brings us to another critical piece of vocabulary you'll want to memorize: live. It means flexible and hard-muscled. By running around, leaping, and engaging in all these friendly, rough and tumble scrimmages with the clinic's shaggy crew of dogs, Tricki is completely transformed. He goes from being basically an uninteresting object lying on the clinic floor to this live, golden figure. The contrast between that listless, bloated sausage we saw earlier and this lithe, energetic animal is the direct result of discipline and a healthy environment. Which leads us to Section 4, Irony of the Triumph. So while Tricki is getting healthy just by acting like a normal, regular dog, back home, Mrs. Pumphrey is practically distraught. And this sets up the story's climax and its incredible thematic irony. Herriot makes the slight mistake of telling Mrs. Pumphrey over the phone that Tricki is convalescing. Now, to you and me, convalescing simply means recovering from an illness. But to Mrs. Pumphrey, oh, this word is a catalyst. She completely misunderstands what the treatment entails, because she genuinely believes Tricki needs to build up his constitution after this terrible ordeal. She immediately falls right back into her old habits. She starts sending daily deliveries of absolute luxuries straight to the clinic. We're talking fresh eggs, bottles of expensive wine, and eventually even brandy. Now here is where the story leans wonderfully into its own comedy. Does Tricki get any of this? Of course not. Instead, Mr. Herriot and his staff consume all of it. They start turning their regular daily lunches into a full-blown ceremonial occasion, just enjoying days of deep content. Herriot even jokes about the temptation to just keep Tricki on as a permanent guest, purely to keep the wine and the eggs flowing. So the crucial point is really unpacking the irony of the title itself. When Mrs. Pumphrey finally arrives at the end of the 2 weeks and sees this lithe, energetic Tricki leaping straight into her arms, she tearfully declares it a triumph of surgery. She genuinely, truly believes that some incredibly complex medical operation saved his life. But you and I know the irony. The actual triumph belonged entirely to common sense, a strict diet, and the complete and total absence of any medical intervention whatsoever. Finally, let's look at Section 5, Mastering Exam Questions. We've covered the plot, the characters, and the irony. Let's move to how this builds a perfect 5 to 6 mark essay answer. We are going to use the PEE structure: point, evidence, explanation. It's your best friend for these exams. If you get a question asking you to compare the two main characters, lay it out exactly like this. For Mrs. Pumphrey, your point is that she is foolishly indulgent. Your evidence straight from the text is that she could not bear to refuse him cream cakes. And your explanation is that this proves emotion without discipline actually harms the people or pets we love. Conversely, for Mr. Herriot, your point is that he is a tactful professional. Your evidence is that he treated Tricki as a regular dog, a normal member of the shaggy crew. Your explanation is that he understood the cure was environmental, not medicinal. I promise you, if you structure your long-form answers this way and use these exact phrases, you are literally handing the examiner exactly what they want to see. Okay, I also want to give you the insider cheat codes on what not to do. In literature exams, precision is absolutely everything. So avoid these really common pitfalls. First, never ever call Mr. Herriot a human doctor. He is specifically a veterinary surgeon. Second, do not state in your essays that Tricki underwent an actual surgery. Instead, use the phrase hospitalized for observation. Third, as we discussed earlier, avoid vague, weak words like fat or lazy. Use the exact value point from the text, bloated sausage. And finally, if a question asks why Herriot was tempted to keep Tricki at the clinic, do not skip over the details. You must explicitly mention those deliveries of fresh eggs, wine, and brandy. By combining these precise value points with a strong structural framework like the PE method, you'll be well on your way to totally mastering this text. To wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a question to ponder, and it's one that reaches far beyond the walls of Mr. Herriot's clinic. When we look at Mrs. Pumphrey's well-intentioned but ultimately disastrous choices, we really have to ask ourselves, is emotional indulgence without discipline ever truly a kindness? Think about how that concept applies not just in classic literature, but in the real world around us every day. Thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive, and best of luck applying these strategies to your studies.